Don't drink that sweet tea they gave you in the mountains. It's a trap. For 13 generations, the elders have been breeding.
Tomorrow, she would be sent to the mist-draped peaks of the Rif, leaving behind the last fragments of her humanity forever. The private carriage rattled violently against the uneven, winding mountain roads of northern Morocco. Jagged cliffs loomed like jagged teeth on either side, eager to swallow the small vehicle whole. Kenza sat frozen in the velvet seat, clutching a small woven bag that contained absolutely nothing of her past. The Ait al-Thalam elders had decreed she must arrive entirely empty-handed, stripped of wealth and memory. Through the fog-streaked window, a solitary stone structure emerged from the oppressive gray landscape. It was an ancient, weathered dwelling clinging precariously to the edge of a sheer drop. The heavy wooden door stood slightly ajar, inviting the bitter mountain wind inside. She stepped over the threshold, her soft shoes scraping against the coarse dirt floor. Lala Isha sat beside a narrow window, her face half hidden behind thick plumes of gray smoke. The old witch drew deeply from a long, carved wooden sebsi pipe, entirely ignoring the trembling girl. The silence stretched until it felt like a physical weight pressing against Kenza's lungs. Without turning her head, the crone finally ordered the child to climb the wooden stairs. She was to wash away the scent of her former life and don the garments waiting on the bed. The staircase groaned under Kenza's weight, each step sounding like a dying breath. The upper chamber was suffocatingly humid, reeking of burned sage and rotting earth. A rusted iron tub sat in the center of the room, filled with scalding dark green water. Surrounding the perimeter of the bath were dozens of towering wax pillars, alternating in pitch black and stark white. Drawn across the wooden floorboards was a sprawling five-pointed star painted in dried ash. In the very center of the symbol lay a white dove, forever stilled by an ornate dagger piercing its breast. A wave of profound nausea washed over Kenza, her mind struggling to reject the horrific tableau. Survival instinct screamed at her to flee, yet a deeper, colder realization anchored her feet to the floor. There was nowhere to run in this desolate wasteland, and disobedience would surely invite a fate worse than death. Forcing her trembling hands to move, she disrobed and stepped into the scalding herbal infusion. The liquid clung to her skin like a second layer of flesh, seeping a strange, numbing energy into her veins. She washed in frantic silence, avoiding the lifeless eyes of the sacrificed bird. Drying herself, she slipped into the coarse, unadorned black robes left upon the woven mattress. The fabric smelled of damp earth and old incense, marking her as an initiate of the shadows. She descended the stairs, her presence now carrying a faint, unnatural resonance. Lala Aisha still sat by the glass, but now a steaming brass kettle rested on a low table beside her. The hag gestured with a gnarled finger, commanding the girl to sit upon the woven rug. A small, intricately painted clay cup was pushed across the table, filled with a thick, aromatic brew. The old woman commanded her to drink, promising it would settle the turbulent terror raging within her chest. Kenza brought the warm clay to her lips, inhaling a surprisingly sweet scent of wild mountain flora. The taste was rich and soothing, a fleeting moment of comfort in a world of madness. She swallowed the contents entirely, unaware of the insidious trap woven into the liquid. Almost immediately, the walls of the stone house began to warp and breathe. A sickening vertigo seized her mind, spinning the room into a chaotic blur of shifting shadows. An intense pressure clamped around her skull, accompanied by the deafening roar of 100 invisible voices. It sounded as though a crowd of agonizing souls were trapped just beneath the floorboards, screaming for release. She gasped for air, looking desperately at her mentor for an explanation. Lala Aisha merely leaned forward, taking a massive drag from her smoking pipe. With a cruel smirk, she exhaled a dense, choking cloud of tobacco directly into the girl's face. The gray fog swallowed Kenza's vision, dragging her consciousness violently into the dark. She plunged into an agonizingly vivid dreamscape, devoid of gravity or logic. In the desolate void, Lala Aisha stood beside her, pointing a skeletal finger forward. Kenza looked down to find her own hands gripping the silver chalice from the subterranean ritual. A blinding, searing light began to erupt from the thick liquid inside the metal cup. The illumination grew exponentially, a terrifying radiance that threatened to burn away her sanity. It pulsed with a malevolent heartbeat, a divine wrongness that defied the natural laws of creation. Kenza screamed silently in the void, unable to drop the cursed object. She jolted awake with a violent gasp, her body slick with a freezing, terrified sweat. The old house was quiet again, the hallucinatory voices replaced by the howling wind outside. Desperation overriding her fear, Kenza begged to know what they had done to the chalice and why she was chosen. The old witch chuckled, a dry, rattling sound, like bones grinding together. She warned her new apprentice to always seek a single answer that unlocks 1,000 mysteries. The truth behind the shifting nectar, Lala Aisha explained, lay hidden in the genesis of the 8th Al-Talam. Centuries ago, 12 ancient clans were burdened by a celestial curse that rendered them vulnerable and outcast. Desperate to shatter their affliction, the Grand Patriarchs convened in absolute secrecy. These men were masters of earthly and celestial knowledge, but their true obsession was the abyssal arts. They possessed forbidden tomes, texts detailing the architecture of reality and the keys to ultimate dominion. Their ambition was to forge a paradise upon the mortal plane, governed exclusively by their own bloodlines. When the mortal kings of their era refused to support this blasphemous vision, the patriarchs turned to the shadows. They sought out the supreme architect of malice, the darkest demon to ever walk the unseen realm. The entity delighted in their desperation, crafting a horrific covenant to grant their deepest desires. To break their weakness, they were commanded to merge their 12 fractured lineages into a single, unified power. A new tribe would be born, the 13th tribe, possessing magical anomalies unseen in human history. But the demon demanded a devastating price for this unparalleled sovereignty. They must carefully orchestrate their bloodlines until a specific, perfect vessel was born, a child holding the concentrated essence of all 12 ancient founders would serve as the ultimate sacrifice. Whispers claimed the demon intended to inhabit this perfect flesh, walking the earth to herald the end of days.
The Eight Al-Talam became the fiercely devoted guardians of this demonic pact, ruling from the shadows. Lala Aisha leaned closer, her hollow eyes burning into Kenza's fractured soul. The girl was the culmination of centuries of selective, cursed breeding, the purest manifestation of the prophecy. Yet, the covenant explicitly demanded a male child, making Kenza an unprecedented anomaly.
The sheer terror of her existence slammed into Kenza, a suffocating realization of her inescapable doom. Lala Aisha confessed her own selfish motive, the intoxicating allure of shaping the most powerful magician in history. Before Kenza could voice the million questions tearing at her mind, the old woman raised a hand for silence. She gestured toward the glass pane, announcing that their distinguished guests had arrived. Through the fading twilight, 4 elderly women emerged from the dense, menacing tree line. Kenza tracked their slow progress across the rugged terrain, an unexplainable dread pooling in her stomach. In a single blink, the distant figures vanished completely from the edge of the forest. A sharp, rhythmic knocking immediately hammered against the wooden front door. Lala Aisha unlatched the heavy iron bolt, revealing the 4 hags standing perfectly still on the porch. They crossed the threshold in total silence, moving with an eerie gliding grace. Taking their seats at a round wooden table, they stared at the young apprentice with predatory intensity. A crushing aura radiated from their bodies, making the very air in the room feel dense and unbreathable. Each woman wore a heavy wooden amulet carved with jagged, ancient runic symbols. Kenza recognized the markings from her forbidden studies. They were the sigils of the master seers. The eldest of the visitors spoke, her voice a chorus of grating whispers, demanding proof of the girl's purity. They needed to witness the anomaly with their own eyes before granting their approval. Lala Aisha removed a dark silk cloth from a brass platter resting in the center of the table. Beneath the fabric lay a single magnificent feather, shimmering with the brilliant hue of molten copper. It was an impossible object, radiating a faint internal glow like a captured ember. The old witch handed the delicate artifact to Kenza, her gaze intense and expectant. The moment the girl's fingers brushed the quill, a brilliant, icy flame erupted along the edges of the feather. Panic surged through Kenza as she tried to drop the burning object, but Lala Aisha gripped her wrist tightly. The fire did not scorch her flesh. It was freezing, a spectral blaze consuming nothing but the surrounding shadows. The 4 seers gasped in unison, their terrifying stoicism breaking at the sight of the legendary phoenix flame. They bowed their heads toward the trembling child, sealing a dark fate from which she could never escape.